Gentlemen in the mix.
Greetings.
Hey Bill, how you doing, man?
Doing great, man. You ready for a brand new cup car tomorrow?
Yeah, isn't that fun?
That is a lot of changes, man. They really went to town this time.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna reserve judgment until we actually drive it. But yeah, I mean, it could be ridiculous. It could feel the same thing. We're not gonna know until we start driving it tomorrow.
I'm just waiting for the guy to puff up and say, I'm missing the tender springs. I could actually feel those and I'm disappointed.
Oh God, yeah.
Without those tender springs, it's done for.
Yeah, it's exactly what it's, that's what's gonna happen. Somebody's gonna say, or the sidewalls of the tires feel a little weird to me, you know?
I just love changing on Wednesdays, though. That makes me happy.
Yeah, I have to say I'm shocked that they made such a change to an old car. I mean, I know
it's got to come from the esports guys in the Porsche Cup. They just finished up 2-3 weeks ago, and you got to assume they're influencing it. Because before, I thought they were closing cheats. You could clearly see a path to get rid of the cheating. And even in this one, they're talking about if you intentionally knock off the rear wing, it screws up the car so bad it's not drivable. So somebody out there is knocking the rear wings off the car. So, but I mean, this wasn't cheats. This is genuinely seems like they're trying to make the car, I hope, more communicative of what it's doing. And maybe it'll help, the car be more fun to drive. Who knows? But I think the esports guys deeply influence this process.
Oh yeah, I think so too. But it'll be interesting to see. But the reason I'm a little bit puzzled by it is, I mean, I know it's still obviously it's a car. It likes to be, people like to drive it and stuff like that. But you would think that the new one would be in the works somewhere, and for them to throw significant resources to changing something up on the old one, I don't know. It's a little weird.
Yep.
Well, we'll see.
What are you guys talking about?
So the Cup car is getting an overhaul in terms of its like suspension. Well, hell, I'll pull it up. Give me a second. Let me find it.
Yeah, while you're bearing that, you know what the best part of that whole release was? It got buried in the news. The Red Bull ring is going to be in there. but they say they're having some dispute over the graphics or something in the release notes.
It's the
That is a
it's
track.
yeah, it's the signage on the track. Getting the licensing for all the different advertisers and stuff. But they've already got it scanned and built. They're just waiting to make sure everybody's happy with, or that all the legal mumbo jumbo is taken care of. So here we go. Let's take a look. We're looking for the Cup car. Actually, let me search 911 Cup. There we go. So this right here, that is the new stuff for the Cup car. So they made it slower on at Daytona and Le Mans. Okay, whatever. That doesn't really apply to us. Tire parameters have been adjusted slightly to reduce thermal degradation over long runs. So basically, they've made it so probably on Daytona specifically, the tires don't turn to lava. But I don't think we're going to notice a difference on that. And it's at a slight adjustment, so I don't think anything. Fine-tuned aerodynamic model so roll and yaw effects are more accurate and have greater effect on side forces and the center of pressure. Not sure what that means. Does it mean it's going to roll more, yaw more? I don't know. The car already freaking, it already slip angles pretty darn good. I can't imagine them adding more of that. And I mean, roll, okay. I don't know. Aerodynamic drag has been reduced for improved real-world correlation. So basically, she's gonna go faster. It was already a bar of soap to begin with, and it's gonna be more so now. So I don't know if it's gonna be a little. My thought is the engine restrictor, along with this change here, is going to yield maybe a net zero on those tracks. But then on tracks that aren't these two, it's going to go faster in the straight line. That's my thought. Front tender springs have been removed, so the car now runs on single coils at all four corners. Bill, I will admit, I have no idea what the hell a front tender spring is, so I don't know what that does.
It keeps the spring under tension. You'll see them on high-end cars. There'll be like a small coil of springs, usually about 2 inches high, and I to my knowledge, I'd never noticed them on my friends' Cup cars before. I don't know that they were ever even there, but in simulation, there's no way you could feel that. Sorry, just getting on my soapbox here. And maybe if you had a simulation that moved, maybe even then, I don't think so.
So is it like would it give the sensation of firmer springs?
No, not necessarily, because it could be sprung at exactly the same rate as the mainspring. What it really would help with, and this doesn't come into Cup cars, if you have, let's say these cars have such minimal travel, it allows that when the car's at the maximum range of the travel, that it'll never come away from the perch. So one of the problems you have is managing spring length and spring tension over the entire travel of the arm. So it's not going to be a feel thing, I'll tell you that. But clearly they wanted to remove it from the model.
Okay. Whatever it is. So your thought is you're not going to feel a difference on that. So
no.
Dampers have been tuned particularly for bumpy tracks, so that tells me it's probably going to be softer. I personally love softer. I always run all the cars if I can choose the springs. I'm always using the softest ones because softer means more grip. It means it moves a little more, but theoretically, mechanical grip is better. So. Okay.
Good timing on this one, Chris, because we're gonna be jumping cars next week at Imola. You can't do a fast lap without putting the car in the air. So this was a good ad.
Yeah, I think so. Differential has been tuned. Okay, what does that mean? I have no idea. So the differential is the thing that sits in the back that makes the outside wheel and the inside wheel and turn different speeds, right? If you have a fully locked differential, the both wheels are going to spin at the same rate, and it's going to be difficult for the car to go around a corner because the inside tire is going to be locked to whatever the outside tire is. So it's going to promote understeer, if I remember correctly. I'd have to think about it a little bit. But if it's more open, then that means that the wheels can turn at different rates, which means you'll end up getting more rear end rotation, so oversteer. It's typical iRacing. I don't know what this means. Whatever. We won't know until we drive it. Toe adjustment increment has been adjusted to allow more fine-tuned adjustments. Okay. I haven't felt the need to make that minuscule toe adjustments, but it is what it is. Rear suspension has been adjusted to reduce bump steer. That's good. I mean, you don't want bump steer, my understanding, right? I mean, the better you can have it so when the suspension compresses and doesn't affect the way it drives, that's good. For the original damaged model, the rear, okay, so there was your, I don't know how many people are wrecking the rear of the Cup car and removing the wing, so whatever. Fix an issue that could cause pedals to vibrate constantly when driving the car. That's a thing. And then iRacing setups have been updated. So, like, going through it line by line, my personal thought is it's going to be pretty darn similar. We'll see. We'll know tomorrow morning. So this is what I'm really excited for.
And Chris, I would offer up, being that we only have one day to get ready, if there's anyone here who gets stuck badly, go in the EDE discussion area tomorrow and we'll help with setups, because I'm assuming the setups will have red flags on them. And so if anyone needs any assistance that's a newer driver or whatever, if you're in the Cup car, even if you're club or pro, I don't care, I'll help you. If you're having trouble getting the car to set back up and have a legal setup, just hit us up and we'll help.
Yep. The good news with the Cup car is there's not a whole lot you can change. It's basically rake and ARBs. That's about it. So there's not a whole lot of items. All right, so we are going to be running Road Atlanta this week. Yay! One of my favorite tracks. Road Atlanta is very similar to a lot of the tracks we've been running this season. Notice a pattern. Classic, mid-60s created road courses with a lot of undulation and rhythm. And Road Atlanta is no exception to that. The nice thing about Road Atlanta, though, is it does have places that passes can occur.
You've got 1 gallon left.
A lot of places that we've been running don't have that ability to pass fairly easily. So we got that going for us. Let's see here. Before we start on this, and I'm sure we'll get a couple more people jumping in. So how's everybody doing? How did last week's race go for everybody? Everybody happy? Complaints to management? I don't know if I can answer them necessarily, but just want to give an open forum for a few minutes to see if anybody, are we getting better? Are we getting more comfortable driving? Are we getting worse? Hopefully not. Chris, I saw you unmuted yourself for a second. I don't know if you want to say something, but just open, sound off.
I mean, I have to say I'm getting a little more comfortable with the car. I got a long ways to go, but I'm still crashing out of races, unfortunately. But I just got to spend more time behind the wheel.
Do you think it's because you're chasing lap times, or you're still just uncomfortable and unsure of the car?
I mean, I guess racing in general is all fairly new to me, so
Okay.
I'm still sort of trying to get used to all the dynamics and things you should know when you're racing, I guess, right? So I'm learning more and more for sure. I'm getting more comfortable. It's just you make one mistake and all of a sudden you spin out and then you're at the end of the race. You're at the end of the line and that kind of thing, right? It just happens. So
Yeah, for sure. No. I definitely definitely understand it. It's one of those things that we need to make sure that we can we get into we got to be comfortable with the car before we can start really going fast, right? So that's something we just got to, seat time is one of the things, and obviously we only have so much time during the day to be able to devote to this kind of thing. It is a hobby for a lot of us after all, and so it is what it is. But to the extent, as long as you're seeing improvement, no matter how incremental, you're going in the right direction. There will be a time where you're improving, and then you'll notice you'll get to like a plateau. Just like anything, like if you ever lift weights or you do anything physical, you'll improve until you'll get to that plateau, and then getting off that plateau is difficult to do to get to that next step, but it is what makes chasing, some sort of expertise in any discipline rewarding, is getting past that plateau and getting past that point. I have a feeling a lot of us are still moving up to get to that plateau, and you'll notice that plateau starts to come in when you start running similar lap times consistently. So like, you know, if you're running Rotorlander, you're just running over and over and over, and you get to this point where your lap times can't seem to get past a point. That may be your pace right now in this given moment. And without going into like specific data analysis or really going and doing a deep dive with a one-on-one with one of the pro drivers or a coach, and they don't necessarily have to be a pro driver, you know, you're not going to get past that point no matter how much time you throw at it. So one of the things we need to make sure is that when we're practicing effectively, and that we're working on something, like we've got a plan, and not just get on and run laps. And I'll go, you know, that's actually probably a good discussion we can have towards the end of this after we do the track walk. Let's talk about how we're practicing, and make sure that we're making our practices, we're getting the most out of them. Because again, most of us have full-time jobs or families and stuff, and we can't be on this thing unless your name is Michael Polisek all the time. So we need to be able to maximize that time that we're actually in sim, to get the most benefit out of it. So, anybody else? Any other questions, concerns, comments?
I'll say something. I think I'm finding more consistency. It's just that it's the 30-minute race, the desire to kind of hang back at times versus still make the run when you see it open and it's still there. So I'm just trying to get better with patience. No,
that makes sense. The 30-minute race, you hit the nail on the head. 30-minute race format is, I mean, it is the definition of a sprint race. It is go, 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 and if you don't take every opportunity that comes to you, you may not get another one. And I know there's been a lot of chatter and a lot of discussion in the Discord channels. I don't know if you guys have seen it or kept up with it. There's been a lot of it, you know, about incidents and things happening and stuff. But, you know, that's kind of also happening, in my opinion, from the format that we're running. You can't sit back and you can't wait and size up the guy you're trying to make a pass on, because by the time you do that, half the race is over. And so it invites or encourages more risky maneuvers early on in the race, because you're going to get left behind if you don't do it, if you're fighting for that. So no, it's a good observation. But the fact that you're getting consistent on your own, and if it's getting easier, that's great. I mean, that means you're moving in the right position. But we can talk about racecraft as well.
Yeah, Chris, what I ran into last week is I was doing what I thought was really well. I was in 10th place with 4 minutes to go. Mm-hmm. And somebody got in, you know, I can't remember what the name of that corner is at most sports, but right after the long straightaway where you do the fourth gear hard right.
Oh, yeah, the S's.
Yeah. But they were like stopped in the apex. And by the time I came down up that hill and I saw that, I'd already gotten off the brake and started my dive to the apex. And then when I realized it, my car did flips and destruction into the wall on the left-hand side.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't, first off, I thought that the person should have gotten off the track or at least out of the line if they were just stopped on the track. And, in the two-dimensional sport, I just didn't realize it, that it was happening. And I guess one of my things, I still blame myself some, because you got to be able to react and run offline on things. But by the time I realized it was too late, and the car just totally wiped out on me. So I know someone like yourself probably would have been able to adjust properly and not lose the car, but I just didn't have control of the car and I lost it. So that's, I guess, more offline, I guess, that your point about practicing is trying to figure out where you practice offline and how do you do that without destroying your car.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of it is just familiarity with the platform, right? I've put in a lot of hours in the Cup car, so I know what the thing's going to do when you have to make a move like that. And in that place at Mosport with the completely loaded right-hander, the car is on. If you're driving the way you should be driving it, you're on edge, and you can't really modify your line once you turn in for that corner, except for maybe nuances, half a car width maybe, but not much. And
it's one thing if someone's driving too versus just stopped.
And it is what it is. But it sounds like you've got a good attitude, David, on that, because it's very easy to say, well, somebody was stopped on the apex of the corner. There's nothing I could have done, right? But that's not the approach you're taking, and that's another thing that we need to look at is, okay, is it unfortunate? Absolutely. Should he have been there? No way. But at the end of the day, it caused you to wreck. So let's look at what little control we had over the situation, and the answer may be very, very little. But if we can look at it and say, okay, did I get a yellow flag going into that corner? Maybe you did, maybe you didn't.
Nope,
could you have
get one? I didn't get one.
Yeah. What about where your eyes were? Were you looking, at your brake zone, and you could have maybe had your eyes up a little further and noticed the car further up the road? Now, I know it is a blind crest coming over a hill, but you still can see a decent way down the road if you're looking way on the horizon, which is where your eyes should be. And maybe that's the takeaway. Whereas, let's keep our eyes up. Let's look like a corner and a half through the corners where we want to go, and basically drive in our peripheral in front of us. So it's not like driving on the highway where we're looking at the bumper of the car in front of us going down the road, but we're looking, 200 yards down the road as far as we basically can see. And if we have our eyes open like that, at least we're expecting, even if it's not our direct focus, we can see enough of it in the distance to be able to say, well, there's something weird, that car shouldn't be there, or it triggers that reaction, and we can react with time. Whereas if we're just looking 50 feet in front of the car, that's going to surprise us when we're turning in and we're not looking at the corner.
I mean, I realized that I was about a half a second late in reacting, but I saw it when I came over the hill and I saw it. I'm like, okay, there's a car in the apex, but my brain said he's moving, right?
Yeah.
And he's just slower. But I didn't realize he was at a dead stop, because when I got there, he hadn't moved at all.
Yeah.
That was my problem. And if I was a half a second quicker, I could have pushed a little more on the brake before I released and dove, and I probably could have controlled on the outside, because I've passed somebody there before on the outside, when you kind of go down the back straightaway, and you kind of sling around them. Yeah. I've done that in practice, but I was prepared to do it. With this one, I just wasn't prepared for it. So yeah, I agree. He shouldn't have been there, but I also know that the good drivers, which I'm working on, and I'm not there by any means, would have had more control. And that's that's what I don't ever practice driving out of the line. That's probably part of my problem too, is I got to work on more of that, I guess. So
yeah, I mean, it comes with it.
Right, just a quick question on that. I mean, and David, I don't think that was me, but I have spun out on a corner, and then let's say, if I see a whole bunch of other cars coming behind me, I just try to stay. I mean, I have done this in the past anyway, where I just stay there because I didn't want to change my line, which might, interrupt other people because they already see me, and then I don't want to get in their way, right? So I kind of just sit there, wait for everybody to pass, and then I go on my way. I don't know if that's the way you should do it, or what you recommend, or...
Yeah, so if you are in a situation where you spun on track and you're facing the wrong way, or you're facing perpendicular to the track and there's traffic coming up before you, you're spot on, Bruce. Leave the car where you're at. It's much easier for people that are coming up on you to pick their way around you if you're not moving. If you're just stationary in the middle of the track, it's so much easier for a car that's coming up at speed on you to go in front or go around you, basically. If you start moving, it's a 50-50 gamble on whether that car coming behind you decides to go to your left or your right. And then if you decide to move to get out of their way, so to speak, you may be moving right into their path, and then they got no hope, right? So it's always just best to be as predictable as possible. And in that kind of weird situation where you've spun and you're sitting there in the middle of the track facing the wrong way, the best thing to do is just not move. Keep your foot on the brake and let everybody go by. And then only when it's clear and you look at your relative to see the time differences. So I would say at least having 5 seconds to the next car. Would that be a position where you can either try to spin the car to go the right direction, or get the car off the track into the grass and then try to move it around off track so people aren't hampered by you going through? But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. If you spin, stay still, assess the situation, be predictable. If you see cars coming, just it sucks, but you just got to sit there and take your medicine and let it go through.
And I've done that. I've done that too. I've spun and gotten people's way, and I didn't mean to do it. So by no means am I blaming anybody. I'm just saying it's just I need to get better at the unpredictability of what might happen. I guess that's what I was talking about, is I need to improve that part.
Yeah,
so when you were talking about
comes with time.
Things to practice and stuff, when you're talking about things to practice, those are the kind of things like in Atlanta, going around turn 6, maybe side by side, maybe something to practice the high line on turn 6. You know what I'm talking about? Things like that
Absolutely.
Possibly happening, but I normally would never do that in practice. I would just dive to that inside just to try to get the best lap time.
If you only drive the line, like the proper racing line, and you never drive offline, then when you're trying to make a pass on someone, or someone's trying to make a pass on you, and you're now offline and you've got to adjust your speed, best case scenario, you're slower. Worst case scenario, you're off. So yeah, you gotta devote a little bit of time. And for some of us that have been running these same cars on these same tracks over and over, we know what that offline feels like, and we can adapt a little bit. But if you're not used to it, then yeah, take a few laps, or even an entire session and run offline. Pretend you've got a car, you're going too wide in some corners, and you'll feel much more confident about it. So when it happens during race time, that's not your first experience with it. No, but good points all around. Thanks for bringing it up. So let's get on with the track walk, since it's already 5:20. All right, so Road Atlanta, like I said, it's a very rhythm type track. I'm going to let the video play once, so you can see at speed my car going around, and then we'll go turn by turn. Okay, so let's take a turn by turn. We'll talk about turn 12 on the end of the lap, so let's go ahead and get through there. So coming down the straightaway into turn 1, this is a good passing opportunity for both either being passed on or doing a pass on somebody, because you can get a good run coming out of the final corner, get a good decent draft on this little short straightaway, and the turn in entry point, there's multiple lines that you can take through turn 1 that it yields itself to a good passing opportunity. It's also possible to take this too wide and make it through just fine. So mark this one off as, if you want to try to get by someone, you can do it here. When you come into turn 1, remember, caveat that I always say on this, if you're driving the roof car, your brake markers are going to be later than in the cup car, because the car just has really good brakes. So just beware of that. So wherever I'm braking, you can probably brake a little bit further. But in the cup car, I'm looking basically for the 100 board, going by it and braking somewhere around this area to start off. My goal here is I want to scrub all my speed and get all my braking done basically before I start turning in. The idea for turn 1 is basically we're going to turn it in and send it, trail brake very little on the entry just to get the front end tucked in. And the sooner we can get out of the brakes and let the car set on the left side of its suspension and roll that speed through the corner, the better. It's got a lot of camber. We're going uphill right at apex, so the car is just going to completely compress into the road. You're going to get a ton of grip about right at apex, so you can always take this corner a little faster than you think you can. So the idea here is we want to use all the track that we can on the ideal line, and we want to send it, and we want to apex this corner a little bit past this initial curbing. So it looks really awkward from if we slow it down, but at speed it doesn't. And for me, and it's the same way in real life too, this turn 1 is very similar. I mean, they nailed it in terms of realisticness. But always what I tried to do coming into this is I'm basically want to feel like I'm turning in and I'm going to hit this flag stand. What ends up happening is when you turn in, and as you're going in with your speed, you're going to understeer initially, and then as you understeer, you're going to end up basically where you need to be at apex. Then everything will come back to it, and we'll just tuck the car in, and it'll be perfect. So if you're having trouble getting the car down to the apex, try to turn it a little bit earlier and try to feel like you're going to try to hit this flag stand. I promise you're going to end up pushing out. If you do end up hitting the flag stand, okay, then don't do that, obviously. But yeah, try to hit it a couple times, especially if you're ending up mid track going through the apex of this corner. So as you can see on the brake, I've already trailed off a significant amount. So let's just back it up a little bit. So I've done a lot of trailing in. I've already started my turning. You can see my steering wheel is starting to move to the right a little bit. And then basically, as I've got this car turned in, I'm almost completely off my brake. And that's because I want this car to settle, like I said, on the left side. If I do this right, I want to be at full, or not as close to full throttle as I can, somewhere where my car is closest to this curbing. And I have no idea if I did it right or not. So, okay, so I took probably a little bit too much speed going in, and I missed my apex by maybe a couple inches, it looks like, at mid-apex. But right around here, I want to be feeding on that throttle and be as close to full throttle. The earlier we can get to full throttle through this corner, the more we're picking up speed coming out of the corner. If we have to delay it, then we went in a little bit too quick. And that's what's happening here is I went in a little bit too quick. I had to wait patiently on the throttle before I could pick it up. Once everything compresses through and we come through and we do a late apex, we should end up no further left than here. I'm basically at the absolute left edge of the track that I would want to be at. We can use this seam as a guide if we want. Ideally, we want our middle of our car to go no further than this seam. In a perfect world, in my mind, I'd actually rather have my left wheels on the seam. I don't particularly like going really wide out here because the track starts to run out pretty quickly. And if we make a mistake and clip that apex curbing on the turn in and on turn one, it can bounce the car out to the left. And if we're not leaving any room for error, we can easily drop a tire here and then we're dead. I mean, we're off in the wall. So, like I said, play with it a little bit, but the later you apex the corner, the more the corner opens up and we can carry that speed going through.
Right, Chris, what gear are you in? Fourth?
I'm in fourth gear coming through here, yeah. This one is a, I wouldn't do third gear. I think that's too slow. Or I think that's too high a gear. And if you're grabbing third gear, you're probably going too slow. So I would try to take fourth. You may, I don't know about the roof and the gearing in the roof, but you may even be able to take fifth, honestly, and be able to get to throttle sooner and carry another mile an hour or two. Play with it. See what you like. I know like in the prototype where you can carry a ton of speed through here, I'm in fifth gear. Coming up the hill, what we're looking for on the way up the hill. Well, one quick comment I'll say. A lot of people, for whatever reason, like to come all the way over to the right to set up for this little turn 2 left-hander that's blind. The only problem with that is you've got the blend line over here and you've got pit road. Now, it's not a big issue with these sprint races because we shouldn't be pitting. And if anybody's coming out of pit lane, there shouldn't even be in. I mean, they're not competing in the race, right? They're a back marker at that point. But for future races where we may have pit lane and people coming out of pit lane because there's a required pit stop, you got to be really careful with this blend line. So if you're constantly coming over through here a shallower line and you're getting the car and you're crossing this blend line, you run the risk of somebody be coming out of pit lane and that's the line that you're used to taking, and now you're going to have a big problem as they're coming out and you want to cross this blend line. So just be aware that that can happen. Personally, I don't like getting the car all the way over here to the right to go left because it's extra distance you have to travel, and you don't really get that much of a benefit going into the left-hander because the left-hander is kind of a throwaway to set up for turn 3 anyway. So I like to have the car end up wherever it ends up. If I can get the car over to mid-track, fantastic. If I can get over maybe a little bit more, hey, even better, but I'm not trying to force it. What I'm looking at up here is these sets of trees. This right tree is the edge of the track. We don't want to be anywhere pointed near it because then as we crest this hill, we're going to run out of track. We're looking at this tree right here. That's kind of the goal on the way up until we can kind of see where we want to put the car. So we're coming up the hill. You can see the ridge line, and we've talked about ridge lines before in the classrooms, like with Mid-Ohio and such, but we can see a ridge line here. So what's happening is we've got grip all the way up into this ridge, and then the grip is all going to vanish. Unfortunately, for turn 2 and going into turn 3, not only do we need to somehow turn left but we also somehow need to brake, and we're cresting a hill. So we're doing everything at once. So we have to be really delicate with our brakes coming over this hill. I tend to lift, and you can see it here. I've come out of my throttle. I tend to lift going up, touch a little bit of the brakes while I still have a little bit of hill to help me brake, and then completely, or very lightly, if not completely, get off the brake as I'm cresting the hill. And then when the car finishes its crest, boom, I'm back on the brake again. And this is where I do my main braking, is when the car has kind of straightened itself out into turn 3. So you can see I've come back on the brake. It's still a very, very tentative brake because the car is still turning to the left a little bit. If we really get on the brake too hard here, especially in the Cup car, we're going to lock up basically. But even if cars that have ABS, there's situations where you can easily spin coming up over that ridge because the car just lightens up and the ABS freaks out and the car is just completely unbalanced and you're trying to get it to slow down. It doesn't like it. So the softer we can be on the brakes coming up over this ridge, the better. And the Cup car, you just have to, or else you're going to spin. So I'm sure all of us have had moments coming over that ridge in turn 2 here. It's probably the sketchiest part of the track. In terms of braking, and one of the sketchiest parts in iRacing in general. I don't know of another brake zone that's as kind of tiptoey as this section here. Are there any questions about the brake zone here? Because this one is a tough one. Okay.
Maybe a comment. I mean, so I do what you do because it's more consistent for me. But if I compare my times to the VRS guys. The VRS guys are carrying that flat all the way up to the curbing, and they are going a little bit further right, and then they're only braking once.
Yeah,
and they do gain like a tenth or two there.
So,
but it's hard to get right every time.
And that's the thing is, so I'm trying to. Is ideally what you could do with a nice sticky track and a car that's perfectly set up, and and a really good driver. Can you carry the speed all the way up to the top? Absolutely. It is possible, and the guys do it. I'm not there. I can't do it. I've got to cheat. And this is me in race trim. This is not me in qualifying. If I'm trying to qualify and I've got a banker lap, I'm probably sending it up here to try to get my last 10th to try to, if I crash, it doesn't mean anything, right? But if I'm doing race trim and I'm trying to do lap after lap after lap and survive, I'm not doing that because I'm trying to, 1, conserve my tires, 2, I'm trying to conserve myself as well because I don't want the stress of having to get this car woed down. And I would much rather be have the car in a better position for turn 3 right here and be prepared for this turn because this turn's more important than turn 2, frankly, than run the risk of not nailing it perfect and the car be a little bit out of shape for turn 3 and I'm sacrificing the speed here because this is the one I need to get right, not turn 2. So
I'm actually glad to see that you're running that more conservative line.
Yeah,
because I was pushing hard to try to get time through there. And
this is not, in my opinion, this is not the place to pick up time on this track because the risk is too high, and the payoff is just not that. You get a 10th, okay, woo. It's just not. This is not where it is. I guarantee you, if you take this one a little bit easier, pick time up through 3, you'll end up getting more than a 10th through 3 if you take 2 slower. So you sacrifice maybe a 10th here and pick up 2 tenths through 3 because you're in a better situation to take 3. So yeah, and that's what Chris is saying. Like a lot of the times you'll see on VRS or stuff, they'll be all the way out here, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to create as straight a line as possible for their brake through here, and do all their braking at the top of the hill. But you really run out of track very quickly. Another comment on this part. This is a really delicate place in terms of racing. If you're too wide coming up over this hill, it's sketchy because you're both trying to slow down and the track all of a sudden just stops. I mean, this turn comes up real quick, especially if you're a car that's over here on the right side. You've missed this curbing. You're over here on the right side and you somehow have to slow the car down and make this tight turn. It's tough. And now add in having another car on your left. Or if you're the car on the left and you've got a car on the right, you got to try to figure out how in the world are we both going to go too wide through here. This car on the right of me, on the majority of the time is going to carry too much speed because he's racing me and he's going to go wide, but I'm going to be wide. He's going to come into me, right? So you got to know who you're racing against and just be smart coming through 3. This is where a lot of problems happen and a lot of hip checks coming through. So keep that in mind. So let's say we've done 2 right. We've taken a nice easy line. We've come over and we've kept the car along this curbing on the left side, and we're about to turn into 3. Where do we turn in for 3? I don't even know, frankly. Okay, so look, I'm looking at again, I drive visually with my eyes up, so I don't actually have a turn-in point here, but we can slow down to see where my turn-in point is. It looks like at the end of the curbing is where I'm starting to turn in. If you notice my brake, I have a little bit of a trail brake to get the nose turned in, and then I'm off of it. And the idea is we want to take our right set of tires and we want to kiss this curbing and cut it, and basically keep the left side tires basically on the yellow line if possible, right here. And the right side tires, we can jump this on the right side. So if we take it nice and slow, I think I completely blew this one. Hold on, let me go to the next lap. Maybe I did. Okay, yeah, that's better. All right, so we come in here, and what we want to do is, like I said, we want to basically straddle this curbing here. And this was not a 1X, believe it or not. So you can see how much I'm taking off, and the more you take off on this corner, the more you're opening up the exit of here. If you miss this curbing and you take it and you don't get your right tires in the air, this corner is a lot narrower. You can still do it, and you saw that I did it on the first lap. I mean, my right side tires are over here, but you can take a lot more of this than you expect. The key, though, when you do it, is you can't be full throttle going over that jump. So if we look at my throttle inputs, I've turned in a little bit of throttle, and then when the car settles and lands from the jump, boom, now you can get back on full throttle and go. So that's the key thing to remember when you do it. Try it a couple of times, try it different ways, see how much you can get away with here without getting the 1X. If you go too much, you will get a 1X. If you go a little further than that, you can get a slowdown. But the slowdown, you'll know, you're taking all 4 wheels into the dirt to get the slowdown here. So usually if anything happens, you tend to get a 1X. But there's not really any reason. The only reason you get a 1X is if you just frankly turned in way too early. I turned in a little bit early on this one. I normally don't take this much off. I leave my left side tires on the track just fine, and then I do the jump. But it is a little precarious if you're not ready and not used to it. So just be aggressive with it. This is the one corner that you can, if you like to hit curbs, hit that curb, hit it hard. There's actually a fine line in here that if you hit it just right, it's like perfectly smooth, and the car just like, it's almost like it's on air. There's no like violent bump at all. It's kind of cool. And it's there in real life too. Any questions about the jump? Okay. All right. So when we come out of turn 3, we're going around turn 4, which is this little left carousel. Multiple lines. You can carry a lot of speed through here, but just beware that if you carry too much speed and you keep this thing flat and you start to run wide, you're going to have to bring it back to the left to go down to the yeses. So the fastest way is just to hug this curbing as best as possible, even if that means getting out of the throttle, which I have here. So modulate the throttle, ride the inside curbing, but the whole goal is to end up right here to go into the yeses. In the roof, I'm guessing there should be pretty much flat, because in the Cup car it's almost flat. So do what you need to do to try to get yourself in a position to do it. I know in the Cup car, I like to upshift to 5th because we're going downhill, and I want to be able to use the redneck traction control, which is a higher gear, so I don't have as much torque in the car, so I can get back to full throttle sooner. The gravity's helping me coming down here. If you're finding it having a problem carrying your speed through the first S, try turning in a little earlier. You can turn in a lot earlier for this first right-hander than you would normally think you could, because the whole car, everything is falling away from you, so the car is going to have a tendency to understeer. So if we turn in earlier to compensate, the understeer is going to put us right where we need to be, which is right here, apexing this curbing. Try not to hit this curbing because it can unsettle the car. You're getting the car up in the air, and you're really loaded coming through here, but you want to get as close as possible. And in fact, it looks like I missed that by a couple inches, which I could have gone faster as a result. Through here, you can hit this curbing, especially on the Cup car and probably the roof just fine. In real life, we hit this curbing really hard, and it's not a problem. But just beware that if you're going to hit the curbing, you want to kind of have your wheel going straight or have a little bit of a left turn. You don't want to have any significant steering angle in your front tires if you touch this curbing. If you're not comfortable with it, you can just tuck it nice and in, and again, apex it right on the edge if you want. Your mileage may vary. So on this lap, you see I hit it pretty good, but I'm ready for it when it hits. I've unloaded the car from the left side and hit it pretty straight. And then the final part of the S's and going into turn 5, the whole goal here is what we're trying to do is we're trying to create as straight a line as possible for braking. And then we're trying to get off the brakes so we can transfer the grip from braking into turning to go up the hill. The tendency here through this corner is to over brake and over slow the car. And then we've got to accelerate from that slower position. Ideally, we want to basically, as soon as we turn in, we want to be able to get off the brakes, carry that momentum, and start feeding the throttle going up the hill. So you can see I've already off the brakes. I'm starting to feed the throttle going in. We can clip this curbing just a little bit, just nibble it. We don't want to hit it too hard because it will unsettle the car. Coming out, so I did 2 laps here because I wanted to show something about the coming out area. This is not a 1X. You can use this, and you can use this access road as runoff. However, beware because it is really bumpy out here. And in fact, right here where this little triangle is, there's what I call the bump from hell that will do weird things to your car. We want to avoid running all 4 wheels in the middle of the left side tires over this area right here because of the bump. So if you're gonna go wide, my mind is go way wide, like I'm doing here. So way out to the wide, attack the curbing straight, get the car straight, get it under you, and then slowly bring it back on before the grass. If we don't want to take that curbing like that, let me go to the other lap, which is what I tend not to do. I tend not to take that curbing if I can avoid it. We keep it nice and clean. Right side tires will get up on the curbing just fine, but so long as our left side tires are on the track. And I'm right on the edge. I wouldn't want to go with my left side tires any further to the right because you'll see as the car right there, it bounces, compresses the rear suspension, and then it pops back up. And if you're on full throttle and you're not perfectly straight when you compress and rebound, it can just send you straight left or right. And I'm sure a lot of us have had problems coming up over that hill. So my best advice is keep it nice and clean. Frankly, there's no real need to go over that curbing and go way wide in my opinion, unless you're trying to do a banger of a lap, that one lap that you're trying to eke out every inch. So let's go back up to the top of the S's again. I'll run it slowly without these stops so you can kind of see what I'm thinking. So nice and wide, come in, upshift a gear higher, apex the first one right on the curbing. The second one, we can apex the curbing again or use it if we want. Try to brake in a straight line and then trail it briefly, get off the brakes, start feeding on throttle to settle the rear of the car. Use a little bit of the curbing and drive straight out on the way out. Any question through the S's? Okay. All right, coming down to turn 6. This is another good place for a pass. We got a nice long straightaway coming out of a really complicated corner, which was turn 5, which is that uphill section we just went through. If you can get a really good run through turn 5, you can make a pass before turn 6. So coming into turn 6, in the Cup car, I brake basically just before the dotted line here, which is also the 200 board. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to slow the car down as best as possible, but then get off of the brakes and let the car roll speed through here. We've got a lot of camber, and we want to try to get on throttle and use that camber as a bowl to catch the car and slingshot us around. So you can see I'm already starting to bleed off the brake, bleed it off, bleed it off, bleed it off. Mid corner, I'm starting to feed the throttle on, and then I squeeze it all the way to full throttle on third gear coming into here, heading up to turn 7. Into turn 7, for me, it's a rhythm thing on where to brake. There's not really any markers out here. I mean, you've got the curbing that I guess you could use the 5th curbing or something, but for me, it's kind of I go through 6, I squeeze on full throttle when I can, and it's like a brap, and then boom, on brakes again. So it's purely rhythm for me because there's just nothing. There's nothing out here to use as a brake marker. So this one's a tough brake zone because it's also the most important brake zone on the track because this is the most important corner. The other thing we can see when we really slow it down is you can see how flat turn 7 is. I mean, you can't even see through the corner, right? And we're elevated a little bit. I mean, if we go to the cockpit, oh my god, that sun, right? You can't even see through the corner at all. And all that means is that there's no grip out there. There's no gravity helping us or anything. So it's like a tabletop. So get back to Chase. So because of this, that means there's just not going to be any grip whatsoever at apex here. So what do we do in order to counter that? Well, we want to get all of our turning done as early as possible so we can power out a turn 7. It was taught to me by Jason Hart that the fastest way through turn 7, the fastest person through turn 7 is not the person that gets to throttle soonest, but it's the person that gets to full throttle soonest. So you've got to be patient. So we turn in, and the tendency right here after you've turned in is to start feeding on the throttle. The problem with that is because the track is so flat and there's no grip, that any throttle you add, especially in these Porsches that have no weight on the front axle, you shift the weight to the rear of the car, which means you take away the grip from the front, and the front end's just going to understeer wide. So you're going to have to wait longer before you can get to full throttle if you go to throttle early. Does that make sense? So we want to wait to go to any kind of throttle until we've got the car completely pointed in the direction that we want. And I was a little bit late. I mean, theoretically, if I had done this properly, I would want to be at full throttle somewhere around here, if possible. So I'm powering out because I've got a straight line. Because I went to throttle a little bit early, and by early I mean I'm starting to pick it up right around here. If I would have waited just a little bit longer, I could have gotten to full throttle sooner, which means I would have carried a little more speed coming out of the corner. On the way out, what we want to do is we want to use the curbing as much as we can. Just beware that when you hit this curbing, you're going to jump a little, which means you're going to bounce to the outside a little bit. So it ends up running out really quickly. We only want to get on this curbing when we basically have the car straight away and we're just eking out that last little bit of track.
Chris, can you hit the inside curb at all, or?
I wouldn't. You can. The only problem with the inside curb, though, is it will bounce your car. And so you're going to have to wait for the car to bounce and oscillate and land and settle before you can get to full throttle, or else you'll spin it. And so that's just delaying your full throttle application further. So what you may gain in a better angle, you're going to lose in having to delay your full throttle input further.
Chris, 2 questions. One, I was just watching last night in the pro race prelude. You know, guys are approaching this slightly differently. This is probably the furthest I've seen of anyone, and it's also maybe slightly earlier. You know, guys are coming in a little later. They're swooping that corner just a little different angle to get a little later, and they're a couple guys were bumping it. I didn't really see a disadvantage or advantage to bumping it. I can't do it because it makes the car just feel too unstable to me. But do you feel like here you're a little early and a little far, or do you really feel like, because if you just pause right here, and this is much more noticeable in real life here, as you well know, there's quite a bit of camber right at the turn. Like there's just like a car with the camber if you track walk there, that's a little dip or a little recessed right there. Yeah. And I kind of see it in the game, but I don't know. I'm very interested that you were a half a tire width or a little more than half a little tire width away from that apex.
Yeah, so yeah. Well, on this one, I mean, I missed it by a tire width. Okay, so ideally, I want my right tires right on this yellow line.
Okay, all right. I didn't understand this was a miss.
No, this is a miss, and maybe
Chris. I thought maybe you'd found something by going out there. So
no. But let's put it this way: I'd rather miss wide than miss tight. And so I am playing where I want to be rather than go too close and risk touching this curb too much, because I'm like you. When I hit this curb, I feel like it's an eternity before the car gets settled on the back end, and I'm losing time. I would rather error out here, but be able to get the throttle sooner, because that's the whole thing about this turn. The guy that gets the full throttle the quickest is the one that's going to be faster down the straight. I would hesitate to go any deeper, because if you go any further, the track just it completely falls away. It gets marbled out. There's literally no grip out here, and so you're gonna have to slow the car down so much to get this tight turn done to straighten it out. It's just not worth it. You may be able to get away with go maybe another couple of feet, but I wouldn't go past the curbing before my turn in. I think that's too late.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah. For me, I'm in second gear in the Cup car. I don't know what the roof is geared like. You may be able to take first. In the RSR, I'm in first through that corner, but the RSR has a really tall first gear. So coming down the straightaway, like I said, that's the most important corner because it leads onto this massive straightaway. Great opportunity to draft your opponent, especially coming into 10A. In terms of taking the fast way down the straight, it's basically use the run out here, and then we want to stay on the left side of the track as much as possible, and the whole goal is to keep the steering wheel as straight as possible. That's going to mean we go fastest, right? So keep it nice and straight. I've been taught to go just straight under the modal bridge and create a straight line to the right side over here, and then just hug the right side all the way down into turn A. It's the shortest distance, and we're not moving the wheel nearly as much, and we want to be accelerating. So that's the whole thing to keep in mind of what you're going to do here. Obviously, if you're drafting on someone, follow them. Even if they're not moving over to the right, just stay behind them because that's going to give you a better benefit. Coming into turn A, turn B, this is where you can make a lot of time up on people. You got to find a good place where you're comfortable with your brake zone, and this is so. It depends on the car, it depends on the person, it depends on the track state. There's so many factors here. I can't say you need a brake right here because it's not worth it. But for me on this particular run, it looks like I'm going over that 200 board. Basically in the Cup car, what I end up doing is there's like a little bit of a ridge, and the ridge you go over that ridge, and then you're starting to go downhill, and that's basically where I start my brake. And this is going to be a threshold brake, 100% without locking up going into here. And we want to basically do a firm brake, straight line, keep it nice, and don't wiggle the wheel, don't do anything, because we need every little ounce for braking. And you can brake harder than you think for some reason, because I think it's because we're going downhill, but the track is coming back to us. So it looks like we're going downhill, but in real life we're actually going into a bowl, and we're going to go back uphill. So this section from the 100 board to the turn-in is actually uphill. But because it looked like we were going downhill, this feels downhill as well. So, I mean, look at my brake. I'm almost a 90% brake in the Cup car. I should have all four wheels just absolutely locked up, screaming, and a cloud of smoke. But because we have so much grip from the compression, we can get away with a huge amount of brake here. What I like to do in my rhythm here is I like to bring the car out a little bit and nibble this curbing. Not a lot. We don't want to go too much because then we risk dropping a wheel in the dirt. But just a little bit, because that just tells me, okay, we're getting near to the turn-in point. And then the whole goal here is we're trying to apex our left tires on the grass, like kiss the grass right here. That's not a 1X. We kiss the grass. I missed it, of course. This was not a good lap. Kiss the grass here, and we don't want to go further than mid-track because we need to set up for the right-hander. The right-hand, this next corner, that's the one that matters. This first one, who cares? Doesn't matter at all because there's no lead up. It's all about the second one. So to do it right, we go to mid-track, and then we turn in. And here's my top tip for you guys here that are watching this. What we want to do on this section, let's see if I can get on the nose. There's a weird thing about this this curbing in iRacing. I don't know why they scanned it oddly. Oh, nose. Okay, so you can kind of see it here. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. Yeah. Okay. So right here, this curbing does like this weird. It's like it's flat, and then all of a sudden it's much more angled right here, and you can actually see a line through here. You can't see it quite as much, but back on the old scan or before they did the retexture, it was much more apparent. But there's like this line here from where like the two meshes of the track come together. So it's flat, and then all of a sudden there's a lot of angle. we want to basically apex this curbing after this angle. If we apex it too early, we hit this mesh change in the terrain and it really upsets the car. So don't be early, but be just after late. So basically, let's look at this blue mark here. That would be a good place where you can run your right side tires over this part of the curbing and it be relatively smooth and you can get the throttle sooner. If we apex it earlier than this, we're going to have to get out of the throttle as the car settles from bouncing around, and it's going to delay our full throttle input coming up the hill. So that's my cheater tip for you guys in terms of where you want to hit here. I'm a little early here, but not too bad. But you can still see, if we back it up and just I let the car run slow motion, you can see the car wiggle as I go through here. See the wiggle? Almost did it right. If you do it perfect, then you don't get that wiggle at all, and man, you can just nail it coming out of here, and you'll get so much of a run compared to everyone else. But the only way you can do that is you have to take it from mid-track or even left track. So like right here. The wider you can take this right-hander, the better, because you're going to get a run coming out through there, all the way through turn 12 and all the way down the front straight. So, and then on the exit here, this is different than real life. We use all this curbing in iRacing, and if you've ever been to Road Atlanta in real life and you use this curbing, you probably need new fillings because it will rattle your car apart. It's really, really rough out there. Coming under the bridge, we've got convenient little flags here. We can just run it basically right under the red or even the red-yellow line right here if we want to get really specific. And then what we're looking for is the yellow pit in blend line right here. So the little yellow markings, just drive right over them, the first one, and that will put you in a perfect situation, a perfect place coming down the hill for your turn-in point down into turn 12. In the roof, you're probably flat. In the Cup car, it is a little bit of a break of the throttle before getting right back on it. And in the Cup car, we're using every inch of this turn to make it work. I mean, like every inch of everything going through there. But it's a very, really, really fast corner. You shouldn't have to brake at all going into the last corner. You should be able to, like I said, in the roof, be planted. I would avoid the curbing on the inside here. Because again, like all the other curbing, if you get up on here, it's going to bounce the car around, and you're probably going to have to get out of the throttle just to make sure you get the car nice and relaxed, and you're going to make it. If you do run wide through that corner and you drop a wheel, don't try to fight it back onto the track. Drive straight, and as you drive straight, you can kindly bring it back. And in fact, I'm going to show you guys. Where is it? Give me a second.
Well, hey Chris, before you change the view, what was that? I missed that thing about the mark on the road to sight the left curb. You said something like there's a mark on the road. I'd never noticed that.
Yeah, so let's go back to the top. I'll show you. So coming down the hill, right here.
Oh, okay.
Go back to the nose. This mark. See, there's two yellow marks. Okay. You can't see pat through the corner, right? So what we want to do is we want to just drive right over it. If we went under the bridge, under the red flag or the red and white partition, and just go straight underneath that, we'll end up going straight over those yellow marks, which will put us in the perfect spot for the final turn-in.
Okay, that's a good indicator that maybe you screwed it up. But I didn't notice that it was even there.
Yeah, it's good because it'll show you if you've got a good line coming up over the hill.
Okay.
You know, and where you feel comfortable. Now, what I'm looking for is in real life what kind of not to do and what to do going through turn 12, and unfortunately YouTube is being annoying. So this is me in a Cup or in a GT4 car. That's probably not gonna, but it's the same thing. So you see the flags where they are, and then you come over the hill, and you couldn't see it because there was a Boxster right there, but there's those yellow lines are there in real life as well. But there is a time when I come through here and I drop two wheels on the left side pretty severely. but I want to show you guys when that happens. Just don't freak out. You can drive through it and still be perfectly fine. So let's see here. Maybe this is it. If I can't find it real quick. Not a lot of people view.
You just have to clean your pants after that, Chris.
Yeah, for sure. It was not fun or fun, depending on the way you look at it. It was sketchy as hell. Maybe this is it. It was relatively early on in my stint, I remember. So a couple things since we're looking at this, since we're going through turn 10A and 10B real quick. So coming down the hill in 10A and 10B, same thing. We're coming down the hill. So this looks like it's downhill, right? Coming into this zone. The thing, though, is that as you're braking, you're compressing back and you're going back uphill. So you can get on the brake really, really hard and slowing the car down. And then we want to apex the grass, just like we did in the sim. We don't want to go past mid-track. And then in real life, we don't have that weird mesh situation, so we can run over the curb and be fine. But also in real life, we don't want to go wide because that is just super rough. Now let's see if this was the area that I took way too much speed coming through here. I missed the apex. Nope, that wasn't it. Okay. Anyway, there's one of these that I went through here where I, like I said, I just completely butchered it. And it's maybe this one. Let's just look one more time. And then I'll let you guys go and we can do it. So coming through 10A, 10B. Totally missed that apex. Coming up the hill. There's my signages. There's the yellow marks on the road. Through here. No? Okay. I don't know where it was, but there was one. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is that if you go wide there, we want to make sure that we get our wheels straight. We drop our left side tires in the grass. Maintenance throttle. We don't want to be full throttle, but maintenance throttle. Get the car under us and then slowly bring it on. If there's somebody behind us and we really went off here, they're going to get by us. So we don't want to get in that weird situation where we're trying to race somebody that took the line properly, because that's when mistakes are made. You light up the rears and then you lose traction in the rear and then you just end up going sideways and ping-ponging off the wall and taking out anybody behind you. So just nice and straight, get the car under you, nice and easy. It's perfectly recoverable through here so long as you keep your head straight. So any questions? If not, I know the servers are open. There should be 2 servers, one for roofs and one for cup cars. Feel free to jump in. And it is, like always, hour and 20-minute practice, 10-minute qualify, and then a 30-minute mock race. Have fun with it. If you have any specific questions or you want to ask me something privately, just stick around. I'll hang out in this channel for a little bit. Otherwise, the channel's down below. Feel free to use what you need to use.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Chris. It was great.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to try to find where I went off to show you what it looked like. It was not fun.
Yeah, perfect, Chris. Appreciate it. I know you mentioned it earlier. I mean, I kind of run out of time, but just the philosophy about approaching practices and stuff like that. I don't know if you want to. If we have time today, or maybe do that another day. I don't know, but
no, I'll talk about it. So when you're going through practices, if you think about anything, any kind of sport that you would practice, right? Let's just take, I don't know, there's probably a lot of us that have played golf or have played golf in the past, right? When you go out and you go and practice golf, there's so many aspects of your game, and I like golf because I used to play it pretty competitively, but when you go out and you're practicing golf, there's many things you can practice. You can practice chipping, you can practice putting, you can practice iron play, you can practice your woods or your driver, all sorts of different aspects of the game. But it's really difficult to practice all of them at the same time. You can't really practice your entire golf game on any given day unless you're there for like 5 hours, because there's so many different aspects that you can practice. So when you go in and you want to practice and you want to really get good, you need to focus on specific things that you can practice on. And sim racing and racing in general is the exact same thing. We're practicing a craft, we're honing our craft. There's different aspects of that craft, and we need to be able to take it in bite-sized chunks. So in my mind, just thinking right here as we're sitting here contemplating exactly how we're going to practice, we need to think about what is the best way, or how can we break it down? So we could break it down into a couple. I think the biggest ones would be, to start off, would be like do we want to practice something like hot lapping? Do we want to practice like a race pace and consistency? Hot lapping would be something akin to like qualifying speeds, taking the fuel out of the car. We're going to try to do as fast a lap time as physically possible that we can. But that's not what we do in a race, right? We want to go fast constantly through a race, but we don't want to go so fast as to risk crashing at any given moment. We want to keep the car underneath us because we realize we got to drive, at least in this series, for 30 minutes. In some other series, you may be racing for like an hour. So we need to allow for a little bit of a margin. And those are two different disciplines in my mind, practicing for qualifying and hot lapping, and practicing for racing. So if you go into practice sessions and you hop in and you're like, man, I'm going to go set the fastest lap, and you go hot lap and you do 3 laps and then you pull over and get a new car, or you wreck after 3 laps, that's not the same thing as practicing for the race, because you would never do that in a race. So if that's all you've practiced, when it comes to race time and you got to run for 30 minutes, you're going to be slower because you haven't practiced the actual race. And then we can get into minutia from there, right? Okay, now I want to practice for a race, but I don't just want to practice for a race. I want to get better at braking specifically. How do I brake better? How do I keep the car more controlled and stuff like that? Okay, well then you go out and you start driving, but you drive with your complete focus on brake markers, brake points, pedal modulation, how to properly brake your car and get it into the corner entry properly. We're not focused on corner exit. We're not focused on mid corner. We're purely focusing all of our energy on getting the right spot to brake, braking the same place every time, and then how we can get and maintain our speed going into a corner. That's very different, and that's getting very specific. That would be like, for a golfer saying, we're going to practice our bunker play, but specifically we're going to practice decent lies in the bunker, or we're going to practice, a buried bunker shot, and that's what we're going to focus on. So you can drill down to very specific disciplines within the race practice. And it doesn't mean that, when you're not braking, you're not doing something else. You can do something else while you're doing that, but that's where our focus is going to be. Another moment may be, especially if we're learning a new track, we may be taking sectors of track. So if we break the track into 3 different sectors, say Road Atlanta, we may want to focus really hard on sector 1, which would be turn 1 all the way to the top of the S's, let's say. And we want to nail turn 1, turn 2, and turn 3 as best as possible. And we have a sector time that we can drive to. And so we're trying to do, not only we're trying to drive as quickly as we can, but we also want to be consistent and make sure that time is getting as close as we can get it to it. The other 2 sectors, we can practice them while we're going through them, but the big focus is we come out of turn 12 and we're really hyper focused on getting through turn 1 to the top of the S's right. And then once we feel comfortable with that, then maybe we switch over to sector 2, etc. Another practice would be offline practice, and that's kind of what we had talked about before, Bruce, was, if we drive the line all the time and we don't drive offline at all, then if somebody takes a dive on us, or we try to make a pass on someone and make it too wide in a corner, and that's the first time we've ever tried to do that, things are going to probably end poorly. Best case scenario, you're just slow. Worst case scenario, you're out of control and you wreck. So practicing offline things could be another method that you want. But you can see, and the whole point of me bringing all this up and explaining the nuances of the different skills required to drive a car fast on a track means that you need to have a thought process on how you're going to maximize the time you go to practice. Let's say you've got an hour, 3 days a week to practice to prepare for a race the next week. How are you going to divide those 3 hours into meaningful practice so you're getting better at both the track, the car, and racing in general, right? So you may put hour 1 on one day to learning the track because it's a new track to you. So you do that practice where you break it up in bite-sized chunks, 3 sectors, focus on each sector, devote each sector 20 minutes to each sector, and then maybe the last I guess 20 minutes per sector, or maybe you do 15 minutes and then the last 15 minutes is the track as a whole, and see if you can get, comfortable with the track. And then the next hour on the other day that you come, you divide that in and you say, okay, I'm going to focus on more nuanced styles of driving. I'm going to focus on braking for the first half hour, and then I'm going to practice, getting to power early coming through out of corners. And these are the corners that I really want to focus on that craft. You can get to that level of detail on how you want to practice. And then maybe your final hour, you're practicing offline scenarios / racing. You're going to do a practice race, and you're also going to, in the practice leading up to the practice race, you're going to drive offline. You're not going to drive the line at all. You're going to, coming down the straightaway, you're going to drive mid-track, and you're going to enter it way too shallow. But you're going to figure out how to maintain and hold that speed going through the entire track by not using the whole track. Those kind of things. And it also keeps it fresh. It keeps it exciting. If you just go out every single time and you don't really have a plan and you just get on the track and you just start driving the line and kind of turn your brain off, you can get burned out pretty quickly because you're just doing the same thing over and over and you're not challenging yourself. So that's a lot of me talking at what meaningful practice means. But if you really want to get better at driving, and in this discipline we're sim racing, right? But it is similar to real life racing. We got to have a plan every time we go and bring the car to the track. Now, going to the track and just mindlessly driving and having fun and grabbing a car that we like to drive around and just enjoying ourselves, that's perfectly fine too. I mean, you need to do that as well. But if we really want to get better, we got to have a plan. Does that make sense?
Oh, appreciate it.
Yeah. Any other questions related to that?
I got one question, Chris, if you don't mind. So I'm curious about this elusive jump that is seamless over turn 3. What does it look like?
Oh, God. I can do it like once out of every 15 laps. It happens, and it's just like, chef's kiss. It's perfect. It's almost like the when you do it, when you land on the back end, the car doesn't hop. You know how normally when you hit that turn 3 curbing and the inside wheel just hops, and when you land, the car jumps a couple times. When you hit it perfect, it's like you have that initial impact and it kind of goes up, and then it just lands on all 4 wheels and the suspension compresses, and then it just stops hopping, and it's perfect. And like I said, I do it maybe one every 15 times. It is, I don't know. It must be such a fine line to hit it just right for it to happen. And it's right on the edge of the 1X. Like, it's just on the safe side of the 1X. So it's like you're flirting with danger every single time.
Huh. I think I've surprisingly I've hit it a couple of times. Say, what the hell happened, right?
Yeah, it felt perfect, right? You're like, what?
but I don't know exactly what to aim for in order to find it, right? So
yeah, I think it's basically with your left tires are as close, or like so. If I take my car here, basically, I think your left tires have got to be like right on the edge. So like I think I'm pretty close right here. But I don't think I got it. I don't remember it being.
But it must have something to do with the angle that you initially make contact to that rumble zone there.
I think what ends up. I think what's actually. I think what's happening is all 4 wheels are getting light, and so you're. Oh, that's not right. So when all 4 wheels hit, like if you keep your left side tires on the road, right, and you don't get them on the curbing, the right side is popping up, so you're compressing your left side, and then when the right side comes back down, it's going to land, compress, rebound, and the car is going to be kind of in flux, right? So the left side doesn't have that same compression rebound as the right side does, so you kind of get this back and forth seesawing until it settles. But I think if you hit with the left tires right on the curbing, like something similar to this, then all 4 wheels, the whole car gets light, it lifts going over, and then all 4 wheels compress at the same time when it lands, and then when it rebounds, the whole car is rebounding as opposed to side to side. It's just an up and down, and then the whole suspension basically just does one compression rebound cycle, and you're on your way, as opposed to back and forth, back and forth. I think that's what ends up happening. So this would have been pretty darn close because I've got that point. So actually let me, nice and slow, let's see what it does. See, Yeah, that's pretty darn close. It only jumped once, right? So that might have been it. I did this earlier in the week, so I don't remember if that was. So yeah, boom, compress, yeah, and back up. That may have been it. So I mean, it's that much curbing. I mean, you're taking a huge chunk of that through there.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I know on VIR there is in the S's the same sensation when you take on the right side, cut that corner or those S's there. There's a way that you just ride over it as if it's not there.
Yeah. No. Yeah. On the S, and you're talking about turn 5 coming up here, right here.
No, I'm talking about VIR in that case.
Oh, VIR. Yeah. There's similar situation in VIR. With the S, exactly. Yeah, it's like the right hander going up the hill.
Yep.
Like put your right side tires in the grass and you. Yeah.
Just inside the grass there, and then it's like there's nothing there. You just float over it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they're little tricks and tidbits, but I mean, that's the difference between me and David Williams with VRS. He's hitting it every single time that way. So.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm lucky to hit it every once in a while, right? And I don't even know what I do to get there.
Well, I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm like, I don't know what I just did to do that right.
Okay.
So while we're talking, I'm trying to find this place where I drop 2 going on the outside of turn 12 because.
Well, in real life, I've been out there also in real life, and it's a bit scary.
Yeah, it's sketchy, but it's not. And when I did the track walk that given weekend, I remember Jason Hart telling me, he's like, if you drop 2 here, just keep your wheel straight, and stay in it. Basically, don't give up because you can save it.
But you say maintain throttle.
Yeah, maintain throttle. Don't come out of it, because if you completely come out of it, it's almost like you're pushing the brake, because as soon as you get off the gas, the car is going to be slowing down and the weight transfer is going to start happening to the front, which means your rear is going to be light, and that means that your rear is going to be the first thing to let go if something lets go. If you maintain throttle, you're keeping the car balanced. Yeah,
but you also say don't keep the throttle in.
Yeah, you don't want to be full throttle. You full throttle, and that's no bueno. That's a problem. Because then the problem is if you're full throttle, you're on a very light friction surface, right? And you just.
But that's what the differential lock should take care of, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, fully welded diff, so the tires are doing the same thing. That's exactly. Yeah, I have no idea what they're changing and what that's going to do. I think maybe it's here.
Well, thanks, Chris. That was awesome as always.
Yeah, no problem, guys. Like I said, this is fun. I enjoy it. Final? No.
Have we ever thought of taping these sessions and have them as a resource on the club site or something? Or Discord or something? I'm just throwing out ideas.
Yeah. So I have it. I have them on my Twitch channel. So I'm recording it right now. And so I will put up a link, so if anybody wants to watch this later, they can. You can revisit it. The only thing is, unless I get more viewers and become, I guess, the next stage, I have no idea. I only do it because my dad likes to watch these things, and then I realized I can record it and it saves it for 2 weeks. But it's got 2 weeks saved. But if I get I think if I average 3 viewers every time I stream, then I become a partner or an affiliate. I don't know, and they get to be saved for longer. I don't know exactly how it works, but anyway, like I said, it's going to be saved on Twitch for 2 weeks, so I'll put a link up and you can watch the video. So my last video for last week, which was Mosport, should be saved, and if you wanted to, you can go watch that. Yeah.
I was just wondering, is there any way for us to save them, put them to YouTube, and then have them?
Yeah, I mean, I could be uploading them to YouTube. It's not hard. I just got to remember to do it. I can do it straight from Twitch, so I can just hit the button to say upload to my YouTube channel, and then it's just saved on my YouTube channel indefinitely. So I could do that if people have interest in it. It's just one button to click, but the problem is that I forget to do it sometimes.
Well, I'm just thinking ahead, right? Yeah. So I mean, you could do this every week, for every week, all year long,
Yeah,
and keep doing the same track 10 times a year, right? I mean, I just thought it might be a resource that we could all tap into and go back and forth, right? So.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like starting to build a library, right? Yeah, no, it's definitely an idea, and something that probably need to think about it. The problem is that we're doing different cars, and I like to do the car that is leading up to the race that we're going to be doing the following week. So we're going to be in the GT3R soon, so I want to tailor it to that as best as possible. The interesting thing about this, though, is that we had two different cars, which is kind of annoying. Well, not annoying, but it's annoying to teach because there's two differences in terms of what works and what doesn't. And they're not necessarily the same thing. The brakes on the roof are so good that you have to drive them a little bit differently. All right. Anyway, if you're not in the sessions, get in the sessions. What are you doing talking to me? You should be practicing.
Thanks again, Chris. Take care.
Of course.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah.
Thank you.
And there we go. That's the end of the classroom session. So I saw you, Tyler, asking. Yeah, this is just a fun for the PCA, Porsche Club of America Sim Racing Series. Oh, I forgot to update the thing. Sorry, I have the wrong title in here. So PCA Sim Racing Classroom Road Atlanta. There we go. That's what it should have said. Yeah, we put these I put these classrooms on every Tuesday at 5:00 Central as a way to teach the upcoming car and track that we will be running in the PCA Sim Series. So that's what this is. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. So thanks for watching. And if you have any questions, just hit me up on Discord, and I'm happy to answer. See you on the track.